Good evening, everyone. Hi. Thank you for joining us for this exciting evening as 4 amazing women leaders share with us some of their professional experiences. My name is Porus Balsara, and I am the interim dean of the Johnson School of Engineering and Computer Science. It is my great honor to welcome you to UT Dallas and to this exciting, interesting lecture hall and the Edith O'Donnell Arts and Technology Building. So before we begin, let's give a warm welcome to all our visitors from Tech Titans and from area high schools. When you hear me call out your school's name, please stand and be recognized. Please hold on your applause till we call out all the names. So first one is Lancaster ISD, Louisville ISD, Plano STEM Academy, Richardson ISD, Townview Science and Engineering Magnet, and the Wiley ISD. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome again. We expect a lot of great questions from you for the panel today. So, a special thanks to our good friends at the Tech Titans Technology Association of North Texas for their passion and dedication to helping reach out to some of these great schools and to motivate them to consider STEM careers. Thank you, Tech Titans. Behind every great event like this, there is a greater team of dedicated individuals that works tirelessly for its success. I would like everyone who participated in planning this tonight's evening stand and be acknowledged for your hard work. Come on, I know there are some of you here. Without you all, we would not have the benefit of listening to this wonderful panel today. Thank you once again. And finally, a very special thanks to the 2 sponsors for tonight's events. First, the Gallerstein Gender Center at UT Dallas. This center has grown into a campus resource for students, faculty, and staff, which celebrates diversity and advocates for women and LGBT communities through leadership development, education, programs, and services. Join me in thanking the Gallerstein Gender Center. And second, the Johnson School of Engineering and Computer Science, with almost 7,500 students enrolled in biomedical engineering, computer science, electrical and computer engineering, mechanical engineering, material science, and systems engineering. Thank you very much, Johnson School. Now, please allow me to introduce my colleague, Dr. Roshanda Henderson, who is an associate professor of electrical and computer engineering here at UT Dallas. Dr. Henderson established the High-Frequency Circuits and Systems Research Lab over 10 years ago and is well known for her research in microwave and modeling of passive components, RF and microwave circuit design, and MEMS simulation and characterization. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Henderson to the microphone as she introduces tonight's special panel.
Thank you, Dr. Balsara. Let me just say to everyone that we are in for a great treat tonight. These 4 women represent engineering excellence. They are technical content experts, respected collaborators, leaders, mentors, and role models for what women can do in high tech and how women play critical roles in solving the grand engineering challenges the world faces today. Each panelist will have time to share a bit about their story prior to us opening it up for the audience to ask questions. Let me briefly introduce these panelists to you. Tamara Crawford is a systems engineer and associate manager at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics, specifically for the Lab Hardware Integrated Fighter Group, Systems Integration Labs, which is comprised of the F-16, F-2, F-A-50, and F-22 aircraft platforms. In this role, Ms. Crawford is responsible for managing members of the IFG team and focusing on the hardware design and integration for various IFG projects. Additionally, Ms. Crawford is responsible for overseeing the costs, schedule, and technical risks needed to maintain total system effectiveness and conceptual conversion. Prior to moving into leadership, Ms. Crawford was part of the highly selective Advanced Technical Leadership Program, which shapes high-performing engineers to become future technical leaders of Lockheed Martin. Currently assigned as a Quality Assurance Engineer Senior, functioning in the role of Supplier Development Integrator, she is responsible for supplier development improvements regarding supplier work product quality and product performance for the C-130, C-5, P-3, F-16, F-22, and F-35 programs on behalf of the Supplier Quality Management Organization. Her previous ATLP rotational assignment was as a senior manufacturing engineer, which resulted in record-making current production cost savings for the F-35 flight line delivery operations. Thank you to Mary for being on our panel this evening. Next, I give you Betsy Wilson, the Vice President of the Project Management Center of Excellence for the Ericsson Market Area North America Networks. She has been with Ericsson for 33 years, performing many roles from the TSS R&D design engineer to the Vice President of Supply Chain to the Principal Customer Project Management, as well as to VP of Business Operations. Key projects for Betsy include the AT&T Wideband CDMA projects, AT&T LTE programs, the AT&T hosted prepaid GoPhone program, cable programs, and TMUS digital service programs. Currently, Betsy is leading a Center of Excellence team of around 187 employees, which in part provides active support to over 400 customer-facing project managers. Ms. Wilson is passionate about diversity and inclusion. She's an active mentor to 11 mentees spanning all disciplines. She co-chairs Ericsson's first official employee resource group, LGBTQ+ and Allies, and it was established in 2017. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Betsy Wilson. Okay. Lisa Atherton was appointed President and Chief Executive Officer of Textron Systems in June 2017. Textron Systems businesses provide innovative solutions to the defense, aerospace, and general aviation markets. Product lines include unmanned systems, armored vehicles, advanced marine craft, and surveillance systems, as well as intelligent software solutions, piston engines, simulation training, and other defense and aviation mission support products and services. She joined Textron Systems after 5 years with Bell Helicopter. In her most recent role, she was the Executive Vice President for Military Business, where she was responsible for providing strategic direction and overall management for all government programs and business development efforts. Prior to that role, Ms. Atherton was the Vice President of the Global Military Development, where she led the company's domestic and international military business development activities. She also held several other positions within military programs, including V-22 Program Manager and the Director of Military Programs itself. Prior to joining Bell Helicopter, Ms. Atherton was the Vice President of Area Attack at Textron Systems, where she also served as the Vice President of Business Development. Before her career with Textron, Atherton spent 8 years at Air Combat Command's Directorate of Requirements, helping to shape the budget and operational requirements and needs for combat Air Forces, and was a contracting officer in the U.S. Air Force. Lisa, thank you so much for being here today. Our panel moderator this evening is Tracy. She's a flight systems engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. She has been at the lab since completing her master's degree in mechanical engineering at Georgia Tech in 2000. In her plus 17 years at JPL, she has participated in the development and operation of the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the Kepler mission searching for exoplanets, and the Juno mission to Jupiter. She is currently the Deputy Project Systems Engineer for the Psyche mission, slated to launch in 2022. She has received several awards, including the NASA Exceptional Achievement Medal for exceptional performance in the development of the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter mission's transition to science phase activities in 2007, the NASA Exceptional Achievement Medal for exceptional achievement in guiding and managing the Kepler launch, commissioning and science operations readiness effort in 2009, and in 2015, she received the JPL Bruce Murray Award for exceptional support for the education of minority and female STEM students through community activities, distance learning, and public events. So we are so honored and grateful to you, Tracy, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Hello, everybody. Delighted to see you here today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and then get off the stage so you can hear more about the phenomenal ladies we have with us today. We'll chat a little bit amongst ourselves and then throw it out to you guys for Q&A. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about how a person like me wound up working for a place like NASA at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. That's me, little baby Tracy, born in Louisville, Kentucky. I see there's students here from Louisville ISD. It's Louisville, where I'm from, just so you know. There's my older brother, Tim, a couple of years older than I was, and much more popular and into sports, which was phenomenal, because when I was a giant band geek, he could protect me from all the other kids who wanted to make fun of me. And my lovely mother, who, even though she was not a technical person, you'll hear more about her later, really inspired me to go after my dreams and really introduced me to the joys and wonders of science and science fiction. She got me this great book that taught me how scientists thought the solar system formed from a giant cloud of gas and dust, which I thought was amazing. People could figure out from looking up at the night sky. And she introduced me to Star Trek, the old version and the new one, and Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica, everything there was out there sci-fi related. She watched it, we watched it with her and loved it. So even though there were a lot of things I was interested in as a kid, there was a common theme of interest in space that kind of went throughout my life. When I was trying to decide what I wanted to do for a career, I decided that a career in space is something that could probably hold my attention for a good 40, 50 years, and I decided to study mechanical engineering at University of Kentucky. I was very fortunate to land an internship at NASA Langley while I was there, 95 to 97. You can kind of figure out how old I was. And then I went to Georgia Tech to get my master's degree in mechanical engineering before moving on to work at the lab. Now, I know that some people out there have this idea that if you grow up to be an engineer or a scientist and work at a place like NASA or some of the other companies we've heard about or anything in STEM, that you must somehow have been this amazingly perfect person from the beginning of your life and never put a foot wrong. Let me tell you, that is not true. And I'd like to give you a couple of just insights into the bumps that I had along the road in my path getting to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. At the University of Kentucky, I was a pretty good student in high school, and when I got to Kentucky, I sort of thought that I could just coast and not work too hard. And I know that there are some chemistry people out there, professors that I met today. Chemistry and I were not friends when I was in college, and I failed to make friends with it that first semester. And I had a really scary moment because I needed to keep a 3.3 GPA in order to keep my scholarship. And my first chemistry class, I walked away with a D. That's D as in dog, not B as in boy, but D as in dog. Very, very horrifying. I luckily got an A in everything else, so I just squeaked by, keeping my scholarship. But I had to retake Chem 1 and Chem 2 at the same time the next semester so that I did not get out of sync with my classes. Luckily for me, the University of Kentucky lets you retake up to 3 classes and replace 3 of them with a new grade, not even average them together. So that second semester, I did all the things that everyone had told me I was supposed to do, but I just hadn't done, like sitting up at the front of the class and actually reading the material before the class and going to study groups and visiting the professor and asking questions. So this is me telling you, do all those things. Don't fall down and have to pick yourself back up the first time like I did. And so happily, I got an A that semester, which replaced my old grade. Now, if you look at my transcripts, it looks like I got a 4.0 that first year. Ha! But that's not exactly how it worked out. But the message there is, if you fail in something, it doesn't matter that you failed. What matters is that you pick yourself up and try it again and do better the next time and just keep persevering until you can get the job done. One really nice thing that happened to me when I was at University of Kentucky, I walked into the co-op office in order to find out where I could go work as a junior to get some experience and learn if I really liked this whole engineering thing. And I expected them to tell me, we're in Kentucky, here's your list of options. You can work at Link-Belt and build construction equipment. You can work at Lexmark and make printers. You can work at Shell and do oil, etc. But they asked me, what do you want to do? And I thought they were kidding, so I said, well, I always wanted to work at NASA, baha. And they said, well, we have a contact at NASA Langley. We'll have her call you. You can do a half-an-hour interview and then see. I was like, really? So she called me. We talked for half an hour. At the end of the phone call, I had my internship and had a chance to do a summer, a spring, a fall, and another summer before I graduated. I decided to go on and get my, thank you very much, I was excited about it. I decided to go on and get my master's degree at Georgia Tech because I didn't quite feel ready to be unleashed on the world as a baby engineer just yet. And that's when I hit a couple of other bumps in the road. When I got to grad school, it's kind of a self-selecting thing, right? Really great students choose to go to grad school. I picked a top-ranked school in mechanical engineering. I felt kind of behind a lot of the students when I first got to class. I had to put in super long hours, more study groups, just to feel like I was getting caught up and keep up with those students. It was really tough that first year, but in the end, I think it really helped to shape me to be ready to go out and start my career as an engineer. And I also discovered well, I didn't discover. I always knew I was a procrastinator, and I suspect that a lot of you guys in the audience are that way too. And I realized while I was in grad school that you can still be your own worst enemy. I put off and put off and put off writing my master's thesis until my advisor had to give me an ultimatum 3 weeks before I was supposed to graduate. Okay, Tracy, it's 3 weeks before you're supposed to defend your thesis. I have not seen a draft of it. If you don't have one on my office desk by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, you are not graduating on time. And I had already had my offer from JPL at the time, so that was the longest 16 hours or whatever of my life to put something together and get it on his desk so I could kind of squeak by. And I pulled it off. My mom would say, of course you pulled it off. But I didn't know at the time, and it was horrifying. So if you're a procrastinator, beat that out of yourself now. It's not worth the pain. So as you heard, I've had a really great fortune of working on multiple projects during my time at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which launched in 2005 and is still orbiting the red planet, sending back all sorts of phenomenal information. Kepler, which is a mission that was developed in order to find planets outside of our solar system, but still inside our Milky Way galaxy. And if you have not yet heard anything about the Kepler mission, you owe it to yourself. Go home, Google it, find out about it. It is literally changing our understanding about the commonality of planets in our galaxy and in the universe. Juno, which I worked on for, gosh, it's coming up on 8, 9 years now, a couple years before launch, and then through the entire cruise and the first couple of years of science. I'll talk a little bit about a lesson we learned along the way there for that one on the next couple of slides. And then Psyche, which I'm just almost moving on to fully full-time, which is going to explore a very unique object in the solar system. We think that it is mostly metal. It's the 10th largest asteroid that's out there, the largest metal asteroid that we know of. And the scientists believe that it was the heart of a baby planet that had been forming and then had either one or many collisions with other things that blew all of the outsides off. So it's literally a naked planetary core that we get to go explore. And that mission is set to launch in 2022. So I told you a little bit about my path to get to the lab. Now I'm going to tell you about Juno's path to get to Jupiter and some lessons we learned along the way. We launched that spacecraft in 2011, and we didn't go straight to Jupiter. We had to launch it out on this big looping path out past the orbit of Mars, and then flying by the Earth in October 2013 to get a gravity assist to get going fast enough to get all the way out to Jupiter 3 more years after that. And when we had this all set up to go, we knew at the time that the spacecraft was going to pass in the Earth's shadow with respect to the sun. So our solar arrays were going to be in shadow. Our spacecraft was going to need to rely on its battery in order to run all the instruments and have a nice little checkout of everything around a real planetary body on our way to Jupiter. You don't actually have to do anything in order to get a gravity assist because you've set up the trajectory months in advance. You're coming in at the right angle, you're coming in at the right speed. It's just physics at that point. I know I talked to someone out there who loves physics, so that was working in our favor. But we did want to use it in order to check out the instruments before we got to Jupiter. And it turns out we had a little bit of a surprise. You can kind of tell by the expressions on the faces of all the people in these pictures, including myself. We don't look all that happy that day. And because of some subtleties in how we had configured the battery and where we had told the spacecraft to get concerned if the power level got to a certain place, the spacecraft thought it had a problem and turned off all the instruments and entered what we called safe mode about 12 minutes into this 19-minute eclipse. And it wasn't a very happy day for all of us, but we learned a lot from it. And from that and a couple of other things that happened around the same time, we were able to make some changes to the way we do our ops processes so that when we got all the way out to Jupiter, everything would be much more tightened down and we'd be much more prepared to do our science mission. So we arrived at Jupiter on July 4th of 2016. That's all of us in the bottom jumping up and down and high-fiving each other. Google made us a doodle that day, which was super sweet of them. It was a really exciting day for us and the world, we like to say. And after the last couple of years that we've been in orbit, sending back amazing amounts of data, the scientists have been able to learn some extremely surprising things about the atmosphere of Jupiter, about the magnetic field of Jupiter, about the core of Jupiter, and we've gotten a chance to, or they have gotten a chance to make lots of articles and be on the cover of Science and Nature magazine. So that's been pretty fantastic. As an engineer and not a scientist, I love the fact that my job allows me to enable scientists to get data to teach us new things about the world. One takeaway I want to make sure to leave with you guys is that you don't get to success by always making the right choice and never falling down or having a problem. You can't just choose all the right turns and then get to where you're going. The path of success almost always leads through failure. And I like to say that failure teaches us things, gives us the tools that we need in order to overcome the obstacles that stand between us and success. Last couple of things I want to talk about, a little bit about heritage for spacecraft, and then heritage for myself and probably all of you. When we build a spacecraft like this one, this is Mars Odyssey, which was a collaboration between NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Lockheed Martin, we think of what it needs in order to be able to do the job that it's doing. We're going to put this orbiter in orbit around Mars. It's going to take data. It's going to send it back to Earth. It needs solar arrays for power. It needs an antenna to talk back to the Earth. It needs those gold blankets in order to keep it from getting too hot or too cold. And when we are going to build a new spacecraft to do a new job, like say we're going to do slightly different science at Mars still in orbit, we think to ourselves, what can we reuse from what came before? What do we want to change just to make it a little bit better? What do we have to change in order to make the spacecraft able to do its job? And then when you push the envelope even more, well, now let's take a spacecraft and put it in orbit around Jupiter. If we still want to use heritage from the previous missions, like Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, what can we still use? Can we still do solar arrays? What do we have to do with the arrays so that they can work at Jupiter? Do they need to be bigger? Do we need to make sure we don't go into the shadow of Jupiter? What can we do with the telecom antenna? Can it be the same, et cetera? So we have to think about all those things. There's this deep history when you're building spacecraft that stretches back to the spacecraft that have come before. And it's kind of like that with me and my family. This is my lovely mother who worked at McDonald's for many years when I was a child. And when I started doing talks to students or visiting conferences and talking about how I became the person that I am, I actually had to go and talk to her. I'm like, so Mom, I'm a very intrepid person. I'm very adventurous. I'm very independent. Where did that come from? I know I get a lot of my interest in sci-fi and space from you, but why am I like this? People ask me, well, did anyone ever discourage you from following your dream? It never occurred to me that I couldn't follow my dreams because she was always telling me you can. I'm like, well, why are you like that, Mom? Where did that come from for you? She was divorced when I was like 2 and raised me and my brother as a single mom for a number of years until she remarried. She was not technical. She finished high school, but she worked at McDonald's and rose in the ranks to become a manager at McDonald's. And I know that from her, I got the do every job to the best of your ability and good things will come to you. She became a manager at McDonald's. When I was in high school, she changed careers and switched to be a licensed optician. So I learned you can change things and the world's not going to end. You can still go off and do something new. And I asked her still, okay, Mom, you did all these things, but where did this come from your parents? And so she told me about her mother, my grandmother. We actually lived with my grandmother for several years when I was young, so I have some lessons directly from her. But my mom told me things about her. She didn't get very far in school, and she had 4 children in her marriage. She cleaned houses for a living for many years, but she always had this spark of doing things yourself. If my mom and her sisters were around the house and something was wrong, a fence got broken, my grandmother wouldn't just wait around for her husband to come and fix it. She would grab a hammer and go at it. And that kind of can-do attitude is something that she instilled in my mom and her sisters, and that they both instilled in me. And so I'm like, okay, Mom, that's great, but where did my grandmother get that from? She also, when she was a teenager, hopped on a train by herself and went to Chicago, which you just didn't do in times back then. And when I was a kid, she went on a trip with her church to Jerusalem, which to me felt like going to the moon. It was on the other side of the earth. And she rode a mule while she was there in her middle age. She's a really cool lady, my grandmother. So I'm like, well, where did that come from her? And so they told me stories about her mother, my great-grandmother, Thelma. And that's a picture of her on her farm in Georgia. She and her husband were sharecroppers. And she also was a person who was very all about getting things done yourself when they need to be done. Also didn't get much schooling, but taught my mother, or my grandmother, and her brothers and sisters the value of being able to do things for yourself. And I think that it was seeing how much hard work that my great-grandmother Thelma and her husband had to do on the farm that led my grandmother to decide, I really don't want to do that kind of work, and pushed her into finding other ways to live her life and instilling in her daughters, go out into the world and find other ways to live too. So that's my heritage story from my great-grandmother all the way down to me. So I'm going to leave it at that and turn you over to my colleague, Tamara Crawford.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for sharing your story. It's truly inspirational. Good evening, everyone. No. Good evening. That's better. It's truly a pleasure for me to be here with you this evening, and I'm sharing with you my journey, my story, and I truly hope that it can be inspirational to you, even to some of the younger attendees, of this encouragement of you to keep progressing toward your dreams, because it is achievable. So I will start with my journey to Lockheed Martin. I've been with the company for approximately 15 years, and maybe it'll be 15 years, but I'm kind of start at the beginning. And sharing my journey, I did have to do some soul searching on really how much to share, but I decided to be as authentic as possible. So some of the markers in my journey that were pivotal for me started in the 8th grade. So prior to 8th grade, I didn't know what engineering was. I'd never heard of the term, but I always excelled in math and science. So it was my 8th grade home economics class. Stay with me, yes. Home economics class. At our school, we had the plus-minus system, A-, A+. And at the time, if you had an A-, you were not exempt from the final. I think I had maybe an A, but I wasn't for sure, so I wanted to make sure that I was exempt from the final, so I decided to do extra credit. And my teacher decided to put some topics in a baseball cap. And so I pulled out a topic that discussed the Amazon rainforest. So I'm like, okay, do research. I had to write letters, go to the library. I received charts and maps, officials from South America talking to me about the Amazon rainforest. And from there, I was truly in love with engineering. That was my first exposure, environmental engineering. And so I knew from that moment that I wanted to be an engineer. Over time, the particular discipline shifted, but I knew that I wanted to do something to be a responsible global citizen and to help make the world a better place. So 8th grade, Then college, so I'm a graduate of the University of Mississippi, from Mississippi originally, born and raised. And like Tracy, I did have some bumps along the way and some discouragement as well, and from some unlikely sources. But I've learned that when you have a goal, it doesn't matter if everyone is in your corner, you can still achieve your goals. So while I was at Ole Miss, I also read the book Skunk Works. So since 8th grade, I knew I wanted to be an engineer. So I worked and excelled in school, graduated, went to Ole Miss. While I was there, I had an internship that did wind tunnel testing. So I was like, oh, this is cool, working with planes. Like, I can do this. The next semester, I had to read the book Skunk Works, which discusses the beginning of stealth technology that Lockheed Martin created. At that time, I'd also heard about the company. I'd heard of the amazing products that it produces, and also the heritage, how people who've worked there generations. So longevity, that was something that was important to me, but also what the company provided to our country and our world. So I read the book Skunk Works, and I remember being in my dorm room on my bed, and I read the book, and I closed it, and I said, I'm moving to Texas and working for Lockheed Martin. Seriously. And the reason that I chose Texas, although the book talks about the Palmdale, California location, the reason that I chose Texas was because at the time, mechanical engineering, entry-level professionals, the highest earning potential was California or Texas. So the cost of living is too high to California, so I'm like, move to Texas. So, hey, process of elimination. But seriously, after I read the book, I closed it and I said, I'm moving to Texas to work for Lockheed Martin. So 4 months after I graduated, I moved from Mississippi to Texas with no job, no family, no interview, did not know anyone at Lockheed Martin, and less than $300 in my pocket. Yeah, my father thought I was nuts. He didn't say that. He said, Tamara, why don't you wait until they call you? I'm like, Daddy, why are you talking so slowly? But being a father, being a natural protector, he felt that I didn't have a plan. But since the age of 13, I had worked towards this goal. I had the degree, and I'm like, I have to try. To me, it's one of the best companies, if not the best company in the world. All they can say is no, but I'll never know unless I try. So I set out, like I said, with $292 in my pocket. I counted every dollar. That was in September. I was out there for a few months with a college friend of mine who graduated a year before I did. And she offered, you know, if you come to Texas, I'm in Dallas, so you can stay with me. So I slept on an air mattress in Texas. So a few months later, got a call for an interview. Interviewed, and May of 2003, started at Lockheed Martin. So I started out on the F-35 program, and that was an amazing experience. For my particular task, I was the only American, the youngest person, the only female, and the only person of color on my team for that direct task. So everyone else was over in England. So I had a UK boss and an American boss. But it was one of the best experiences that I had. Great teamwork. I never felt like an outsider. I knew that if I gave my best, that would be reciprocated. So I started out on the F-35 program. Then I was selected for, and at the time, F-35 had a critical need for engineers in the mass properties area. So that deals with the weight, balance, and inertia of the aircraft. So they picked 5 young engineers to interview. From that 5, only 3 were selected. I was one of the 3. So I started working F-35 mass properties. From there, got tapped on the shoulder to work for the F-22 program, which is our Raptor program. So the majority of my career was with the F-22 program. And I had lots of stretch assignments along the way. And during that time, from May of 2003 until maybe December of 2013, I never interviewed. Everything was, I see what you can do, come work for me. So how Tracy mentioned, when you do the work, your reputation does precede you. So in that time working for F-22, I did work for Mass Properties, but I was also selected as a technical assistant or an executive assistant for one of the senior leaders. That was an amazing experience. I was also a cost account or control account manager. So not only understanding the technical piece, but understanding cost, schedule, and performance. That does matter when you're running a business. Also, I was selected for a unique opportunity. During that time, the F-22 program was ending production. So the government decided that we're not going to make any more of the F-22s, but if we change our minds, we want you, Lockheed, to be able to reconstitute the production line and crank out more F-22s. Well, we don't know when we'll get that call. It's been more than, 10 years already, and we haven't got that call. But in 20 years from now, if we get that call, Lockheed still has to be ready. So I was the team lead for this effort. It had never been done before. And the previous lead was a principal engineer. So I was a level 3. So at Lockheed, you have entry level or engineering level 1, level 2, 3, through level 6. So the previous person in the role was at a level 6. I was a level 3. He retired. They're like, Tamara, here's a golden opportunity for you. Like, really? It was already behind schedule. But being younger, that did not hinder me. I wanted to do a good job, so I was able to go in, create the processes necessary, build the schedules. I was able to reduce the schedule, the period performance, by over 4 months from the original schedule. So when I started, it was behind, but when it ended, I saved over $1 million and also ended it sooner than the original schedule. So you can do anything that you want to do. As in my bio, I also was selected for the Advanced Technical Leadership Program at Lockheed Martin. And most people, they stay in their same job and will do a stretch assignment on the current team. At the time, I wanted to do something different, but I didn't want to just interview for a new team and not know anything about it. So I chose to do rotations. So I was out on the F-35 flight line as a manufacturing engineer. Awesome. And I also did a rotation in supplier quality management. So for me, I was strategic in what I chose because understanding what it's like on the production line is very important for what we do at Lockheed, but also working with suppliers. You know, it matters the products that we give to our customers. They're not going to blame the suppliers, they're going to look at Lockheed Martin. So ensuring that the processes are in place, understanding that the same level of quality that's expected at Lockheed is translated to our suppliers and sub-suppliers, that's something that has been an invaluable experience for me. Now in my current role, I am in an official L-code role. So I am the manager for the IFG, or Integrated Fighter Group, lab hardware team, an amazing group. I am younger than the majority of my team members. I have approximately 17 team members, but they love what they do, they know what they do, and I appreciate their knowledge because having that knowledge helps to set the stage for the next generation of people that are joining our team. And I have on there my next. What that is, I don't know, but I plan to do the work necessary to open up the opportunities for me in the future. So I can't really tell you a lot about what I do, but here are a couple of pictures. So this is in the early days. This is in front of the first carrier variant for the F-35 back in 2009. And then this was a couple of months ago at Jet Day with half of my team. So not engineers are boring. We do have some energy here. And you will see the T-50, the F-35, and the F-16 aircraft. So that's an opportunity that the company provided for us because we work on those products, and sometimes we don't see our work come to life. But this was an opportunity for us to have that, and we truly enjoyed seeing what our hands have created for our customers. So So for Lockheed Martin, these are some of our business areas. Aeronautics, that is a particular business area which I work at in Fort Worth, Texas. We have missiles and fire control. We have rotary and mission systems. And we also have space. So those are some of the business areas that we have our specialties in for Lockheed Martin. And the enterprise operations helps keep it going for each individual business area. The reality of success, the top line. That's what people think that it looks like, you know, yeah, I started, okay. 5 years, I'll be the CEO. Okay, 7. No, it does not work like that. This is what success really looks like. You will have bumps in the road. You will have things that take you in directions you had not planned, but you can still achieve your goal. And then the last is the power of one yes. When I was creating this presentation, I kind of did some reflection on my path and how some of those rare opportunities came to me. And it was when sometimes someone I didn't know, gave me a yes. For some people, they saw my passion, they knew my hard work, and wanted to give me the opportunity. And for some, they were curious, they just wanted to see what I could do. But you will have many no's in your life, but all you need is one yes. And that yes may come from someone you had not expected, but it's what you do with that one yes. That one yes, you can truly achieve your goals. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Betsy Wilson, and I'm from Dallas. I work just down the road at Erickson, and when I get another chance, I want to thank you guys for having me here. I have a special thing for the school. I didn't go here, but a lot of my team went here, and so I'm really grateful that this school exists because my company is a lot better because it does. So just we can go to the next one. I cannot believe I included this picture of myself, but I didn't think this all the way through. I was going to be standing in front of it. But I always laugh when I get asked to come and speak at STEM things because I'm just going to be really honest. I was supposed to be a rock star. And I don't know what happened, but I do have a dual degree in classical guitar and in computer science. And I've been a studio musician, and I played bass with the Dixie Chicks before they got famous, when they were playing down on the street corners in Dallas before Natalie joined them. And that's really what I wanted to do. And then you see right under there, I list my role model as my mother. And the reason I have that dual degree is because of my mother said, "Would you like to have a car and clothes and a house? Do you think you could also get a real degree?" And I'm joking about it, but that is the honest to God's reason why I have 2 degrees is because my mother asked me to get 2 degrees. And, you know, I went to the University of South Alabama. I'm originally from Buffalo, but my parents tried to kill me and move me to Mobile when I was 12. And so I went to high school and college in Alabama. And my mom was a real interesting character. She really just, she influenced everything about me. And from the time I was born, I remember I was in like the 11th grade and I was talking to some people about college, and one of my friends said, "Well, I'm not going to go." And I'm like, "What do you mean you're not going to go?" I didn't know it was optional. I mean, it would be like not going to first grade. And not only was it not optional, but it was my job to figure out how to pay for it from the day I was born. That was drilled into my head. And my mother would say, "I'm giving you a gift." And any of your parents out there giving you this same gift of letting you pay for your own college education? Okay. So, you know, honestly, I had to work hard. You know, I've been with Erickson for 33 years, to be 34 in June. And if you look at my resume, what's on it before that is I worked at Pizza Inn. I worked at a nursing uniform shop in the mall. I was a ticket taker at an AMC movie theater. And probably my best job was for 2 years, I was Chuck E. Cheese. And that's why I didn't have a baby until I was 29. because that was that was a good form of making you stop and think. So. Anyhow, my mom, it was a heavy influencer on my life. And, you know, she just told me from day one that I could do and be anything that I wanted to. And by the way, because she didn't get the chance, I was going to take that chance. And so for me, it was unnatural to think about things like diversity and inclusion. It honestly never occurred to me that I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. And I look back, I mean, at the University of South Alabama, the degree computer science, it was like invented the year I joined the college, right? I mean, I know this is going to be hard for some of y'all based on the age that I see out here, but in 1984, like, there were no cell phones, okay? Or if you had a cell phone, it was about this big and rode in the trunk of your car. And only super rich people had them. There was no texting. There was no texting. There was no internet. There was no Google. There was none of that stuff, right? So when I started in computer science, we weren't doing all the cool object-oriented languages that you guys get to do. We were doing really awesome things like COBOL. And if you ever get bored, go and try and write a program in COBOL. But, you know, I took a course in every discipline because my mom told me to, and I figured out what I was good at and what I wasn't good at, and I loved how I was very practical. If I was going to do this for a house and a car, I was going to make some money, so I picked computer science. And then, you know, my college just offered this degree in telecommunications. So I was like, well, that sounds okay. That sounds like AT&T. I can do that. So I had a telecom kind of sub-major. And, you know, when it came time to get hired, Ericsson came to my school because it was near the beach. That is how they chose the University of South Alabama. I'm not kidding. And, you know, it was either work at the paper mill or keep on at Chuck E. Cheese or move to Dallas and try this thing. And so I came. I graduated out of a class of 30. I was the only girl. That's fine. I didn't really think about it. I started here, and the company had no business. So they just thought it would be a good idea to hire a bunch of people, right? So they said, well, this is dangerous, you know, to have all these 96 young kids in this empty office building. So they sent us all over the world for training. So all my friends got to go somewhere cool like Australia or England, and they're like, Betsy, you're going to Finland in the middle of the woods in a place called Jorvas. So I went there. And I actually worked on the code that makes those cell phones y'all love so much work. And that was pretty cool. So the first, the start of the digital systems, the TDMA, the AMP systems. And so that was pretty cool. But I'm going to get into that more. But that was kind of like leading up to my college career. Two other really important pieces of information. I am married to Sylvia Wilson, who's sitting out in the audience right there. Hi, Sylvia. Also a very important person in my life. And then I have a son, Daniel Gonzalez, and I will tell you he is the absolute most important thing I will ever do in my life. He's 25, and he's my pride and joy. So the other things that I'm passionate about, I'm now passionate about D&I. I have a lot of mentees. I love people like you that are here. You are the future. You're what jump me out of bed in the morning and keep me going every night. You make me want to qualify every day at the ripe old age of 54. I am a co-chair for Ericsson Employees Resource Group, our LGBTQ and allies. If you had told me 5 years I'd be standing on this stage disclosing any of this to you, I would have said you were crazy, but my job happened to send me out to Seattle for a year, where I learned how it felt to bring my whole self to work. And when I moved back to Texas, I refused to give that up. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Wow, these giant pictures of me. Okay, so this looks real cool, like, right? Like I was there, I told you the giant cell phone that only worked in one country down there. So I came in and I was actually a developer, right? I was an R&D software designer. And then I was a project manager, and I was a customer project manager, and some of you guys have heard about LTE. Look, I was a principal customer PM. I was the first in my company to be a principal CPM. There was 120,000 people, and I was the first, probably the thing I was the most proud of back then. And then look at all the VP titles coming up. Woo! And now, look up there, the Internet of Things. It's not space, but I guess some of this stuff happens in space, so it qualifies. But let me tell you about what's not on this chart. So the first time I was a VP wasn't where it's listed there. That was the youngest female VP in Ericsson in late 90s. I reported directly to our CEO, and I had a big team. And you heard in my bio, I was head of supply chain. And it was a really good time for me. And that rock star I told you I wanted to be? I had arrived. I was that rock star. I was all over the place. I got to go everywhere in the world and do everything. I was totally a legend in my own mind. But life has a funny way of happening to you, because in 2002, I figured out that I was an alcoholic. So I've been sober for 15 years. And then just about my first year of sobriety, I'm telling you, God has a sense of humor. I got diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. So, and I'll tell you, when I got that diagnosis, I wasn't thinking about my job and how famous I had become in my own mind. I thought about my 11-year-old kid who other people were raising, and he didn't really like me anymore. And it's funny how all of a sudden everything shifts. So what you don't see up there is I went to management, and I worked for an awesome company, and they said, "Betsy, we understand." And I became an individual contributor again. And then I proceeded to get what I can only describe as a series of the most horrific projects that you could ever imagine, because I was one of the most overpaid individual contributors ever. But I got to stay in Dallas. I got off the road. I got my life back. I met Sylvia, and I got my son back. So totally worth it. And at the time, I remember thinking, man, I just had to take a knee. It's true what they say, you can't have it all. But let me tell you what happened in those 7 years, because I'll just finish off. Daniel went to Boston. He went to Stanford. He's got a degree in chemical engineering, and he's married to his high school sweetheart. He's 25. I'm telling you, he calls me every week, and I almost missed him, you guys. But in that 10 years that I spent with him, I learned a lot, because guess what? Y'all, especially the younger people, y'all are pretty smart. So when I was ready, when he took off for Boston and for California, I had a different skill set than the people that were going the conventional route. Plus, I'd been a firefighter for the last 8 or 9 years. And the one big thing I learned is the power of being fearless. People think that the opposite of love is hate, and I can promise you the opposite of love is fear. Every big mistake I've ever made in my life is because I was afraid. I was afraid you might not like me, I might not get my share, you might figure out I don't know what the heck I'm doing. That's when it gets crazy. So I learned a lot in that time. And it's all kind of coming to, the middle chapters got nuts. So again, I remember how I felt when I was about to graduate from college. I wanted the whole book. And I hated it when people would tell me, just have faith, just enjoy the journey. But again, I'm standing here, at the end of mine, and all I can say to you guys is believe in yourselves. Effort is so important, and try really hard not to be afraid. Thanks.
I don't know about y'all, but I just want to sit down and listen to the three of them, so I'll just come down and join you. I'm inspired. I'm Lisa Atherton. I live in Keller, Texas. I didn't grow up in Texas, but we got here as fast as we could. That's the saying, right? And you got the clicker? Yeah, sure. I think I only got 2 charts. I'll tell you a little bit about my journey. My chart's pretty busy, but I'll just walk you through from left to right. These are the things that are important to me, right? And every day it's not always in this order. But I'll say in the upper left, and I think you heard a lot from the other ladies on this panel in that upper left, that one always takes priority for me. it was interesting listening to everybody talk about their moms. My mom would fall over right now if she heard that I was talking about her on the stage. But my mom was the very first student to enroll at a community college there in Central Florida. She didn't know that it was abnormal for women to enroll in school, and she really didn't know that she was the first student to enroll. And she enrolled in school, and she took a class, and then she said to my dad, she's like, I don't feel well. And she was pregnant with me. So she stopped, all right? And she raised me, and I got to where I was toddling around, and so she went back to school. She took a few more classes. She told my dad, I don't feel well. She had my brother. I said, you got to stop taking these classes, Mom. But it took her 14 years to finish her community college degree, her associate's. And in that time, she paused. She worked at a shoe store. She worked at Kmart. You know, we thought we had it all. We didn't know, right? I thought it was normal, you know, our life. I didn't know that we didn't have a lot of money. Life was good for us, right? My mom and dad were always there. But when I got to middle school, my mom and dad had sat down, and she said, I really want to finish my degree. I really want to finish school. And so they said, okay, she was going to step back. My dad was a math teacher at our local high school. And she enrolled at the University of South Florida. And when she told me, and I remember 6th or 7th grade, she told me she was going to go into math. And I went, math? You're a girl. You should do English or history. And my mom got so mad, right? And she got in my face and she said, I will do whatever I want, right? And of course, you know, as a 12, 13-year-old, I rolled my eyes and went on my way. But you know what? That spoke something to me. And my mom then went full-time while I was in middle school. And she got her full degree. I remember sitting at University of South Florida when she graduated. And about that time, I was trying to figure out, what is it that I want to do? And I found this, it was actually a boy at school who was going to the Air Force Academy, and he was kind of cute. And so he was telling me about the Air Force Academy, and I talked to some folks, and they were like, well, you know, girls really don't go to the Air Force Academy that much. And I went home, and I remember what my mom said, and I will do what I want to do, right? So I applied, and that was where I was going. I was going to the Air Force Academy. I applied nowhere else. And I fortunately got in. Not sure what I would have been doing otherwise. But I got into the Air Force Academy, and I went there thinking I was going to be an astro engineer. Didn't really know what that meant, but I was going to go be an astro engineer. Then I went to be a human factors engineer, and then I just kind of got that basic engineering, and I got legal studies on top of that. But then when I got out into my full-time career in the Air Force, I met this really great guy, and I call him my merger and acquisition. He was a single dad of 3 kids, which is interesting when you're 23 and you pick up a 7, 10, and 11-year-old to start raising. So I picked them up, and it was then that my career kind of shifted. I said, well, I can't go full-time and dedicate into my education over here, so I'm going to go get my business degree. So I went to the College of William & Mary and got my business degree. And at night, and I remember getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and finishing papers because, like Tracy, I'm a procrastinator, and I learned, don't do that. Get your study groups, don't be a procrastinator. So I got that degree, and in that process, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be an ice cream mogul, and I don't want to do this day job stuff anymore. So I talked to my husband. He was getting ready to retire from the Air Force. And we had seen Cold Stone. Anybody heard of Cold Stone Creamery? So we had gone by the store, and this is back when Cold Stone was just getting big, and there was a line out the door, and I was like, they are making money. So we looked into it. We bought a couple of franchises, and I became an entrepreneur by night, and in the day I kept my day job out at the Air Force Base, and my husband ran the store full-time. The kids were teenagers at that time. I think they were actually 20, 19, 16, somewhere right around there. And about 6, 7 months into it, I went, I don't feel too well. So big surprise, who's 11 now. And so that caused us to kind of step back and say, all right, this kind of changes things a little bit. We had tried really hard to have Hayden, and for about 7 years, and like Betsy said, he is my life, right? He's the best thing I've ever done. And so there's times, oh, I got emotional there for a second. There's times, you've heard the phrase, can you have it all? No, I don't think you can, but you can in pieces, right? You can have it all over time, as long as you put your priorities in the right place at the right time. And at that time, right, I knew that I wanted to be all in on having this baby. And so my husband and I decided we were going to put the store up for sale. And he became a stay-at-home dad to take care of our son. And but we still needed to make some money. And about that time, Textron started calling and asked if I wanted to come up and be a business development manager. And I didn't really know what that was, but I said, sure. So I went up and I interviewed. I was 7 months pregnant and waddling around, and the first guy that interviews me, he says, you realize this job requires a lot of travel? I said, yeah. He says, you're going to be a mom. I said, yep. I know that, actually. So he goes, well, you're going to be away a lot. And I said, yeah, I know. My husband and I had worked that out. And I know what he was trying to do, right? He was trying to protect me, and he was trying to, from his experience. But what I realized in that moment is that my husband and I had made our decision. We knew what we wanted to do. And actually what I found over time is that guys must be away from their kids just as much as ladies must be away from their kids, right? So there is no gender in that at all. And so he should have just let me make my decision, which I did. And I took the job, and I was going to prove to them that I was going to be really, really good at that job. And that job matriculated into another job. And I've been with Textron a little over 10 and a half years now, and I'm on my 10th job with them. And I think it was, as Tamara was saying, I never interviewed for a job, right? I got in, and I tried to do real hard, do real well, and they would tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, we got something else for you. So I get in that job, I throw myself in. I had some horrific ones where it was like, what am I doing? But I did really well at it, and I didn't complain, and I knuckled down, and I brought team together. And that's one thing I would leave with you, is that there's nothing I have ever achieved on my own, ever. Any failures are mine, but everything else has always been about the team, and it's always been about the person to the left and to the right who's helped me get there. Which brings me around on the chart to social responsibility. I believe it's a moral imperative for us to give back to our communities. We are an incredibly blessed nation with an incredible amount of resources. And I believe even the poorest of us have more than some of the other nations around the world. And I think it's not only is our responsibility, but I think it's a detriment to your life if you don't pour back into somebody else. And so I try to bring that in my leadership style now, and put that out into my teams. Along the journey from my education, I got the chance to be a part of the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program, which is a collaboration between the Bush Institute and the Clinton Foundation. It's where I met a couple of folks in the audience here who were able to kind of orchestrate for me to be here tonight. And as part of that, I was able to meet some folks who give back to our vets. And as a part of that, I was able to then collaborate with my company, with them, and to pour back into their organizations to help veterans with PTSD. And so I say all of that to say that I took advantage of the job that I'm in to be able to bring and give back to those that need it. And it's beyond the bottom line, it's beyond the profit and loss, it's beyond the engineering. I believe it's an imperative for us, and don't ever lose that, right? And I know that when you're young and you're in college and you've got time to give into that and you get fired up about it, but all of a sudden life comes along, you got kids and you've got spouses and you've got things you got to do on the weekend, and you start to drift away. Don't drift from that, right? Hold on to that to give back to others. Thank you. So, in closing, should I get the hook? This is what I do now. So I'm the CEO for Textron Systems. It is mental gymnastics every day. So I have everything from hovercraft to piston engines to electronic systems to unmanned to what else do I got there? Simulators. I've got an aggressor fleet. I actually have the third largest Air Force in the United States that works for me, which is kind of cool. But what we do is we provide training to the Air Force and to the Navy to pretend to be the enemy so that they can have training. So with that, I will sit down, and you guys can start asking us some questions. So.
Well, I hope you guys had as much fun as I did listening to all the stories. I kind of just want to throw all these questions out and be like, so what did you say about you? No. But we'll start with these, and then when we spend a little time doing this, we'll switch it over to the audience for some Q&A. So let's start with some of the more general things before we get into the personal questions. So what's been at the root of most of the technology breakthroughs in your experience from what you've been discussing? Oh, dear.
Hello. Okay. It's really simple, necessity. So what I find is if you can articulate a need, people will create. And, there's a lot of controversy about, should you innovate just for the sake of innovating? I've seen performance evaluations where people are supposed to turn in 5 creative ideas, but where I've really seen people just shine is when they have a real need.
That makes sense to me. Anyone want to add to that, or we'll move on? I'm stealing that answer for the next time I have to be on one of these panels. So, kind of sort of related, which technical skills of yours have been most critical to your biggest successes in your careers? And maybe they haven't all been technical.
So I kind of alluded to it in the remarks, but it's really been about teamwork. It's been about trying to figure out, because there's various technical skills required to get to the solution, and it's finding the right people that excel in those various technical skills and bringing them together towards the common goal. And if you don't have a good team, you're going nowhere. And so it's being able to identify those gaps and bring them together for teamwork.
I agree with that. Teamwork, but also communication. You can never over-communicate. And as well, just your mindset or how you approach the problems. Sometimes we only think of the solution, meaning that there's only one answer, when in actuality there are many paths to achieve success or your goals. So sometimes it's reframing the issue and finding multiple solutions to reach success.
Okay, nice. Can you share a few recent examples of how you, as technology leaders, are leveraging diversity, millennials, females, what have you, to transform your company?
So we're actually in a bit of a turnaround right now. So our backlog for our business has started to decline. And so what I did when I took over this role about 9 months ago, and we went through, and for our company we have career files. So people self-identify in their career files. And so we went through and we found 12 folks, various diverse backgrounds, minority, different, and when I say diverse too, it's people in Boston versus people in New Orleans, right? So they even have a different kind of mindset and how they approach the problems. And we're creating a center of excellence for engineering to create an innovation center, which you would think we would have already had, but we don't. And so bringing them together, but the interesting thing has been how they have had to collaborate across state lines, across time zones, and being able to use technology to enhance that. I think has also been a real benefit in trying to create the innovative and leveraging that talent.
So one of the things that Ericsson is doing, we have innovation centers, but we have created this young advisory board. And so there's an entire process that you go through to get on it, and then they get access to executives. They actually consult with our executives, and it's been good. They bring really fresh new perspectives, out-of-the-box thinking, and they're a group of people that haven't figured out yet what they can't do, so they're amazing.
I like that. And with Lockheed, especially for my team, as Betsy mentioned before, sometimes it's out of necessity. As an example, for my team, an entry-level engineer, one of my other team members passed away, and we needed this work done, and we decided to give this entry-level engineer a shot. He didn't have anyone to confer with. He had to look at the notes from his predecessor, figure things out, understand the requirements, and he totally rocked that assignment. So sometimes it's necessity that creates those opportunities. Also with our company, we are shifting, we are hiring as well. Seriously, we are. But bringing in diverse talent, whether it's in age or other facets. But companies that are diverse, they are more successful. So our company recognizes that and bringing in more ideas to create innovative solutions for our customers.
Oh, that's nice. Now, so I was going to save the personal questions, but this one reminds me of one that I really wanted to go back and ask you, Betsy. Thank you for sharing such personal things about your story. When you mentioned leaving Seattle to go back to Texas and not wanting to have to put yourself back in a box, so to speak, how did that go? Are you comfortable to, I didn't even tell her I was going to ask you that. Are you okay talking about, right, was it difficult? Was it easier than you thought?
So it wasn't that hard. And, you know, of course, close people know. I mean, and it's not like I went and bought a T-shirt that says I'm with her and did laps in the parking lot. That's totally not what happened. But it's small things. Like when I say I wasn't able to bring my whole self to work or be myself, if it was a casual acquaintance and we were talking about what we did on the weekends, I would play what I call the pronoun game, right? Because I didn't want to say anything that would indicate gender. And it's exhausting, and it's awful to not be able to share those parts of yourselves, because we all spend a lot of time at work, right? It's almost like our second family. And yeah, it was horrible, but it was super freeing, and actually nobody really cared. I'm sure that some people did, but the people that I cared about didn't care. And, you know, I went out to Seattle to change a project, and it ended up changing me, and then it ended up changing my company, because as soon as I was out, it was amazing. It was almost overwhelming, the outreach that came to me, and they had just been waiting for somebody to step forward. So it was okay.
That is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Wow, I love that. It was an interesting thing, a couple of the stories that came out of ladies saying that there were people in their families that were trying to be protective in sort of managing your expectations, right? Your dad thought you were crazy for just driving out to Texas. I might have been a little bit on his side. Wow, that was interesting. But, wow. But can you share some examples of how you handled like other real discouragement, either from peers or from your management, regarding your STEM endeavors over your careers?
Can you hear me? Okay. I will share an example from undergrad, from college. And for this particular several months, semester, I had an aunt who was sick, who had recently passed away from cancer. My mom was her caregiver. At the time, my mom was sick from a different illness, but she was wanting to help her sister transition. So I had an aunt dying from cancer, a mother who was sick, and a couple of months later, a grandmother who was sick. So all of this while I was in school. I was chapter president of my sorority at the time as well, balancing schoolwork. And I would go to class, and then I would go to a neighboring town around 45 minutes away. My mother was in the women's hospital, and my grandmother was in the other hospital. This is after my aunt had passed away in August. So around the October time frame, both my mother and grandmother were each in the hospital. And it was touch and go, because the doctors basically said, we don't know what's going to happen with them. So literally every single time that I went to the hospital to visit my mother, I didn't know if she was going to be alive. Then I go across the street to my grandmother, who was in the hospital. I didn't know if she was going to be alive. So balancing all of that, it was just a rough semester. Sometimes life just happens. And my schoolwork did slip a little, and I had kind of alluded to having some discouragement from an unlikely source. And it was actually my academic advisor. This person did not ask what was going on with me. He knew my track record and, you know, good grades and everything. He never asked what's wrong. He just said, you may want to think about something else. Yes, he did, yes. Yeah. And that really, I was really taken aback with that, but for me, I did have to do some reflection. Like I said, since 8th grade, that's something that I had wanted to do, a goal that I had worked toward. He has a PhD. I mean, surely he knows what he's talking about. But I did some soul searching, and for me, part of that is understanding my purpose, and my faith played a great part of that. And I remember I was heading back to Ole Miss on a Sunday, and I'm like, okay, new semester. If I need to change my major, I don't know what I'm going to change it to, because I want to be an engineer. And I went to church, and the message that the minister shared hit directly with me. And basically, the title, and he looked directly at me when he said it, he said, "Why should you back down when God is backing you up?" I said, okay. And from then on, that was it. So as time progressed, I still had other encounters as far as difficulties, but that was something in the back of my mind, like, okay, I can do this. It is achievable. And again, it goes to that one yes. That yes didn't come from my academic advisor, but later on when I did my internship, it came from a professor that I did not know at the university, but that sparked my interest in working with aircraft, and hence I'm at Lockheed Martin.
So Betsy used the word fearless, and I was talking to some of the young ladies out before the event tonight, and I used the word fearless as well. To me, I think that's a key word, right? I'm just embracing fearlessness and not listening to any of that negative talk. I'll tell you a funny story, though. I mentioned that both my parents were math teachers, and so I'm what they call a 4 degree or a freshman at the academy. And I tested really well, and so they placed me in Calc 3 for my first semester. And the academy's a little pressure cooker. There's a lot going on. And so what they call prog, which is kind of midterm, and I get my grade, but I had an F. And so to call home and tell my 2 math teacher parents that I had an F in Calc was not a very fun phone call. And so, I'm all upset and I can't make it. I can't do it at the academy. I should just drop out. I should just go home, right? I should just quit. And so 2 things happened. So first is there was an upperclassman, male, who basically said, "You will do this. You can do this. You need to be fearless. And if you make it, I will come back from wherever I am in the world and commission you into the Air Force." And he did. He kept to his promise. The second thing was my mom and dad sent me a care package after I had called and told them that I had gotten this F. Now, at the academy or anywhere, right, when you get a care package from your parents, you're thinking cookies, candies, maybe some tickets to the movies. My parents sent more math books.
That is fantastic. I hope you guys are coming up with some good follow-up questions out there. Wow. So a lot of us have talked a lot about what things were like in high school and in college. What do you wish someone had told you while you were in high school or college? And if you can't think of one, I've got one.
You should answer.
Okay, I'll take this one. So for me, now my caveat is if someone had told me this, I would have been grateful to them, but I'm not sure I would have known what to do, so good luck. That's if you were still out there, which is I think the educational system, because it's a pressure cooker, right, because you want to get your grades, you want to get your A or at least your B so that you can go on to do whatever you're going to do in your life, you are almost forced into how do I spend my time the most efficiently to get an A? What's the minimum I need to learn? What do I need to memorize? What's going to be on the test? I'll focus on those things to get an A. And then at the end of the semester or at the end of the year, you hit the delete button and flush all the stuff you don't need to make room for the next year's worth of stuff. And while you can train yourself to be a great grade-making machine that way, that's not the best way to learn. The best way to learn is to actually understand the fundamentals of things that you're being exposed to in class so that you can build upon those and be able to go out and do jobs like we have, where the answer's not in the back of the book. You can't ask your teacher what the answer is. Maybe you'll have an old colleague's notes to go by, but you have to somehow use everything you know to figure out the answers to brand new problems. I wish someone had told me, don't worry about memorizing the equations. That's not what's going to matter downstream. Try to really learn in your bones the fundamentals of what you're doing. Now, the problem is that school is a pressure cooker. You need to get your grades, right? They're not the be-all and end-all, but they're important. And so I would have had a hard time, even if someone had told me that, figuring out how to do it and still get the grade. So I wish someone had told me, but nah.
I finally thought of something. You sparked me. And that's about learning how to learn, right? And, you know, I will just, before I share what I wish someone had told me, I mean, I watched my kid do it. So I told you he went to Stanford and he got his master's in chemistry. And he went to DuPont for 6 months, and he called me one night and he goes, man, like, I hate this. So he's like, I'm coming home. And I was like, what? Oh, no. So he came home, and he was home for about a month. He went in the bedroom a couple weekends, and he came out, and he's like, I'm a programmer now. And I was like, what? And he goes, no. He's like, for real, like, I'm a software developer. I'm an agile software developer in Perl and Java. And I'm like, well, how'd that happen? You just been in the bedroom for a couple weeks. And he's like, but Mom, that's what I went to college for. I learned how to learn. And I can promise you, I would just say, and he will kill me if he ever sees this, but he's going to be 26 in May, and he tells me he's going to pay his house off in November, and I believe him. So learning how to learn is a big deal. But for me, what I wish somebody would have told me is, and we were talking about this table at dinner, you know, it's the aptitude versus attitude. And when I came out, like, if you think of your career or even your life as a pie chart, and there's 3 pieces of pie, and there's a 10% slice, a 30% slice, and a 60% slice, and you can place performance, exposure, and image. You know, I had it all wrong, and I think especially a lot of young females do. They think it is 60% performance, and then they throw image and exposure in there somewhere else. You have to have performance, and that is 10% of the pie. But what a lot of people don't realize is your network and that exposure is what really is going to make your career, make your life. Closed mouths don't get fed. And, you know, to this day, everything that I am, I owe to those people that were around me. So that is one thing I always coach and mentor people about is work your network, have a network. You know, it's like being on an airplane and it's going down. Stop making everybody else okay. Get your oxygen mask on, take care of yourself, and get out of the back of your own line and move up. And then you can really do great things. So I wish somebody had told me that, because I think I missed out on some things because I was so focused on performance and less on the networking part.
That is phenomenal. Thank you. So we did get the hook, and I'm supposed to throw it out to you guys, but I just have to ask them one more question. Sorry, they're going to fire me. No one's going to ask me back next time. But we heard a lot about the Women Mentoring Women program here at the school and talked to a lot of students who are involved in mentoring programs. Do you guys want to, if any of you have a couple of quick things you want to say about mentors in your careers, did you have one? How did you choose them? What makes a good mentor? Any element of that you want to touch on?
So there's formal mentoring programs, and I think that they're fantastic. The best mentoring I've had, though, has been informal, where I have sought out people who I wanted to emulate. And when I found people who I said, I believe what that person's doing and I want to be like them, and I approached them and said, you know, can you tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are? Can you tell me a little bit about, you know, what makes you tick? They are more than happy to share. But the mentor-mentee relationship is more on the mentee than it is on the mentor. And so, you know, leaning in, learning to learn, making sure that you find somebody that you want to be like. Don't pick just the CEO because they're the CEO. Not all you don't want to be like all CEOs, right? I mean, you need to pick somebody that you want to be like, and then just ask, be inquisitive, be curious. When you stop being curious, you're dead, right? So be curious.
Mentoring, for me, I think one of the things that has been helpful is seeking out mentors who possibly are not in the same area. So although I'm in engineering, my current mentor is in finance. So there's certain perspectives that he can give that perhaps I would not have ordinarily received from someone in engineering. But informal mentors are just as great. I have people on standby that we have an understanding. I only come to them when I have problems. And that's the way that they wanted it. So, you know, having informal mentors where someone you can kind of toss an idea to, having a formal mentor relationship is important as well. But sometimes I've had people that approach me like, hey, do you have a mentor? Or I've been watching you. So it can be either way. But for most people, like Lisa mentioned, do your research. If you see someone who's doing something that you want to do, ask them questions. I've rarely had anyone who would say no because you're wanting to learn, you're wanting to grow. So having different types of mentors as well as sponsors is important, but also seeking out someone who can provide a different perspective will help you as you advance as well.
That is phenomenal. See, aren't you glad I asked them that question? Okay, so this is going to be interesting. We have a new method of getting questions from the audience. I have forgotten what this is called, but we're going to demonstrate, and then you guys are going to get to participate. Here we go. Yes, it is. So this is a microphone, and what's going to happen is if there's an audience member who would like to ask us a question, we are going to toss this out to you. Don't hold it down here, because then we can't hear what you're saying. Don't hold it up here, don't hold it up. Get right over here, and we'll be able to hear you, okay? Don't be scared. It's padded. Probably won't drop it. I'm going to do a quick demo here, and then I'm going to toss it out there. Ready? Who's going to be my demoing? Ready? Don't be scared. Hello? It's going to work. People in the front are going to get preferential treatment. Ready? Oh, a tall person. Oh, really? No. That's cheating. No, I'm tossing it to them. It's got to be tough. They told me. Ready? Oh.
Hi, my name is Anu. I'm a computer science major. I'm a junior this year. I also have a political science minor. My question for you is, it's really encouraging to see women, you're all really awesome. I loved hearing your stories, but it's really encouraging to see women who, some of you knew what you wanted to do from day one, some of you didn't, but you still ended up in really great places in your family, in your life, in your career. So knowing that your journey can take so many turns, what advice do you have for young women today who don't really know where they want to go? And like, what opportunities should we pursue? How do you know when to say yes and when to say no? Things like that.
That's heavy. So one of my little secrets is, so I always have a 5-year plan, but the dirty secret is I've never ever achieved one of them, right? But the plan has always given me kind of a direction. And so, for instance, when I had that stint where I was going to go be a criminal lawyer, right, and I was going to be just like on what is it, Law and Order, SVU, and I was going to, that caused me to say, okay, I'm going to move to this area of the country because this is the school that I want to go to, and I'm going to go pursue this degree. That took a turn. I ended up going to get my business degree instead of a legal degree, but I had a direction of where I knew I wanted to go, and I had a lofty goal that I wanted to achieve. And so just having the goal, just thinking through it, having the critical thinking skills about what that is, has always kind of propelled me forward. I keep talking about my math teacher parents. My dad used to always say, you need to create your own luck, but luck is a formula. So luck equals opportunity plus preparation. And the only variable in that equation that you can affect is the preparation part. So always be prepared. And so I just always try to make sure that I was constantly learning, constantly preparing, constantly thinking about, okay, if I want to be here, and I do it now, right? I mean, I'm in the role I'm in, you think, okay, I reached CEO, now what? Well, I'm already thinking. I'm not going to tell you, but I'm already thinking. Well, okay, I will tell you. Well, because I'm seriously, I'm like, I might run for office, right? This world needs some people in office. So what does that look like? What do I need to do in order to be able to be prepared for that? So I would just say, I mean, just throw yourself a goal out there and work your way back and just create some directional goals and go for it.
Thank you.
Now, one thing I would add to that, where'd you go? You're right there, right? If you have no idea even what goal to pick, you'll hear this from all sorts of people. It is highly important to pick something that you like a lot if you can't find something that you'll love, because then at least you'll enjoy the journey, even if you wind up taking a turn and doing something else instead of waking up hating life thinking, this sucks, but one day I'll be a millionaire. That's not a good way to live.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Hassani. I'm a junior arts and technology and computer science major, so I pretty much hate myself. I wanted to ask, so in such a field where it is a very male-dominated, in a classroom setting or in a professional setting, did you ever come to like a point where you were like, I wish I could change who I was, or I wish I could change my image? And how did you, if so, how did you like come out of that rut?
Okay, how well can we tell these stories around? Can we keep it in the family in here? Okay. I can tell it anyway. So I was taking a Constitutional Law 101 course, and I was the only female in the class. And the professor, at the time, dates me a little bit, but at the time there was a case before the Supreme Court where some ladies, waitresses at Hooters, were suing based on their outfits, right? And so the professor turns to me and he says, my last name at the time was Cherry, he says, so Cadet Cherry, what's your opinion on this, right? So puts it squarely on me, right? Because I'm the only woman in there, and so he thinks he knows what my answer is going to be. And so I said, well, you know what I would do is I'd open up a restaurant next door, call it Cajonas, and get a bunch of good-looking guys in there. So I guess to answer your question is, don't ever think about changing yourself, right? Be you. If somebody had told me something that I should have lived by and not have changed, I tried to be too much like one of the guys for too long, right? I tried to step into that, you know, the jokes and try to let them say things that I shouldn't have let them say. Don't do that, right? That's something, if I could change for myself going back in my 20s, I would not allow that anymore.
And to add to that, just be authentic. When you aren't yourself, it is tiring. For me, I'm soft-spoken by nature. I'm introverted, although you may not believe that, but I am. But don't change who you are, because the world needs your voice. The world needs how you approach problems. Whether it's your background, the classes that you take, how you approach problems, that's unique to you. So if you don't share your ideas, if you don't share your opinions, then the team may not be as successful. But being who you are is freeing, and it's necessary, because then you share your ideas. I mean, I'm an engineer, I'm a geek, but I consider myself a chic geek. You know, like check the shoes, you know, I like, you know. And it truly is okay. I don't have to be like one of the guys to marry is what's needed. So be who you are.
I cannot agree more. I had a young engineer come to me once and say, you know, Tracy, I've been told that in order to be a successful engineer, in order to grow up the leadership chain, that I can't be nice, that you have to be aggressive. And I'm like, no, because in case you can't tell, I really like people. I enjoy being around people. I enjoy being a slightly crazy person. And I like being nice, right? It makes me feel good. It makes them feel good. I think as a systems engineer, when you're working with a team of people and you're trying to build a team that is collaborative, you get more out of people if you're in a pleasant environment. And so I think it's horrifying that someone can actually walk away with the impression that they have to change themselves into a harder person in order to be successful. It's just not true. I couldn't agree more with what Tamara said. What you're bringing to the table is necessary, and you can find a way to be successful in a way that will be surprising to the people who think you can't do it that way.
Hi, my name is Jalen, and I was listening to you all. Huh? Oh. I was listening to you all, and all of y'all talked about teamwork. And with teamwork, I feel like communication is key. And over the weekend, I attended a space implement design competition in NASA. And I had setbacks of communicating with my teammates because I was a young girl, a young woman. Have you all had any setbacks with being a woman in you all's field?
So make sure I understand your question. So you said you had setbacks because they weren't listening to you, or because was it because they weren't listening to you? Or were you nervous?
I just felt like my opinion wouldn't count because I was doing it.
Did you say something and they were like, laugh, or were you?
Yeah, they just said it to the side and was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So you know, a couple little things that I think are. I always took a seat at the table, right? So anytime you came into a meeting, I always made sure I sat at the table, not on the wings. I always made sure that I had, and it had to be a cogent thought. It couldn't just be to throw something out there. But when I had a cogent thought, I made sure that I voiced that. If I felt like it wasn't heard, I'd say it again, and make sure that it was heard. You know, sometimes maybe my opinion wasn't the right opinion, and that's fine. But if I wasn't being listened to, you know, what you might try is following up afterwards on the side and just pulling the person aside and say, is there something that I'm not providing that you need more of? You know, just approach them. I don't think there's anything wrong in pulling people aside and saying, is there something I need to be doing differently in order for you to hear me? Because, you know, frankly, we're not always right. But we always need to be heard. And so if you're not being heard, I would pull a person aside and confront them on it. Not aggressively, but confront them.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that is if you're in a situation like that and, you know, things are said, they're pushing your opinion to the side, and then you feel like you can't speak up anymore, one thing that it can be good for young people, it doesn't even matter if you're a woman, if you're a man, whatever, if you see something being done that you don't agree with, one way you can poke at that is to ask questions. That's a non-aggressive way to kind of get at it. You know, can you explain to me why we're doing this option? Can you explain to me what we're getting out of this option instead of that option? Is kind of a gentle way to get your opinion in there in a way that makes it easier for people to hear you, even in the back of their mind, even unconsciously, they're thinking they don't want to listen to what you have to say. That's something that works well for anyone joining a new company. When you're a junior engineer and you feel like a moron, because I sure did for many years, asking questions helps people see that A, you're trying to learn, and B, it's a sneaky way to get in some suggestions.
Hi, my name is Ashley Moreno, and I was just wondering, what is the most memorable possible bump in the road that you had during college, and how did you manage to get through that problem?
I'm having to go back, so y'all got an advantage. I mean, for me, it was really the struggle over the major that I already talked about. So it was really hard for me to have to give up that dream of music. And you know, really, maybe what I should talk about is, so it was a bump, but it was a huge adjustment. There are videotapes that exist of me and some very senior tier 1 C-suite telecommunication executives singing some really fun songs. That guitar continues to this day to open doors for me professionally. I don't know if you remember the crazy picture, but that was a fundraiser I was doing for the American Heart Association that all of our executives attended. And yes, there is a videotape. I see you, Julieta, with your phone. So, you know, I had probably similar bumps to you guys. My D was in Pascal. Me and Pascal didn't get along very well. You know, it's just about perseverance and plowing through. And I like to say, we've decided in my family that we're not an outcome-based family, we're an effort-based family. Because if you focus on the effort, and I think you guys have said this very eloquently, the results come. When you over-rotate on the results, I think it's a waste of time. So, and again, you know, do the sweat equity. And I would even say, you know, when Daniel would go for a test and he would think he bombed it, I don't care. As long as you put in the effort, as long as I saw you study, that's what you could do. That's the part of the luck that you control. And if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. So That wasn't a very compelling answer, just the same stuff, but.
I'll add on to the front to tie something that was mentioned earlier together. Now we're all old and wise, and we can tell you some stuff like, oh no, we got the hook. This is the last answer probably. Your story about bombing Calc 3 resonated with me because when I got to the University of Kentucky, they had just started this new program to say, you know, for students who did great in math in their high school and want to test out, don't do that, because we've had a lot of students who are fabulous come in, start at Calc 2, 3, and then do terrible, and there's a struggling to catch up for the rest of their schooling. So they put us, it was optional. You could choose to take the special program, or you just start with Calc 1. They had classes. They also had, like, it was a lot of extra time, but it was that extra support to help keep you from falling into a situation where you have a big problem to overcome. And so this is going to be a weirdly contrary, right? Shoot for the stars, but don't try to run too fast. Make sure you start at an appropriate place so that you can be successful, and that'll help keep you from having some of those bumps in the road. But I think that's it. I think that was our time's up. Oh, no, we had one more question. Yeah.
What are we doing to make sure that kids young adults who should be in engineering get through engineering?
Wow.
Because I think, especially with women, and especially with a lot of minorities, they drop out before, they get to that point of, becoming an engineer. How do we stop that?
That is an excellent question. Does anyone know off the top of their head, or do we need to think about it for a second? If you guys didn't hear his question, he was saying, how do we stop students from dropping out of engineering before they reach the point of finishing the program?
I think one of the ways that can be accomplished for me, although I don't have any children of my own, when people ask me if I have kids, I say I have thousands of them. And the reason that I say I have thousands of them is because I am a part of an organization called TAME, which stands for Texas Alliance for Minorities in Engineering. So I volunteer, work with the students, and with that particular program, it's a K through 12 program. So the students have curriculum. They have different projects that they can work with. They do timed math and science tests. They have engineering design challenges. So it's that positive reinforcement that's necessary that will help encourage and keep those students in the STEM track. Not only having the positive encouragement, but being prepared. So those are some of the things that I do that kind of help in that endeavor. I do mentor and give back my time and paying forward to the next generation. And sometimes it does help to have people who have made it to reach back and let people know that it is achievable. And before I forget, did anyone do any of the pilot simulating activities that were outside the simulators? Did you? You tried? Well, I want to thank the team. I think maybe Demetria is still here. Yeah, she's still here. But there were volunteers from Lockheed Martin. They gave of their time today to provide the cockpit simulator experience for some of the F-35 aircraft. So I really do appreciate you volunteering your time. So it's exposure for students and giving that positive reinforcement as well as preparedness that will help keep them in the STEM fields. But thank you, Demetria, and to your team.
Thank you, everybody. I'm just going to wrap up by saying you might have seen me scribble in notes. I'm like an excessive note taker. But I just wanted to throw out some of the themes we talked about today, which were great to help them stick in your brains. We talked about teamwork, about communications, about sitting at the table. We talked about not changing yourself just in order to fit in with some concept of what you need to be successful. Have a 5-year plan. Even if you don't follow it, it helps you at least get going on the right track. Be effort-based. Be curious. I'm actually going to give a whole talk about that. And curiosity is huge. Aptitude versus attitude. Learning how to learn. Have faith. Be fearless. And need is the mother of invention. So lots of great topics covered here today. I want to say thank you to my fellow panelists. This was a lot of fun for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it too.
Good evening. I am so sorry that I am the person who gets to cut this off because I know that there's a lot of great questions, but would you please help me just say thank you one more time to our great panelists. I have a question. If the audience wanted to connect with you through social media or anything like that, maybe there are some unanswered questions or some really burning questions that they want to ask, is there a way that they can reach out to you through any social media platforms?
Yeah, I always forget to say this. I have a public Facebook page called Space with Tracy. I apologize in advance. I don't update it nearly as often as I should, but you should be able to at least see what I'm up to and reach out to me that way.
LinkedIn would be the best way to probably reach me. Happy to do that. I have a Facebook page too, but it's mostly pictures of my son, so it's probably not a lot there for you.
Yeah, you guys can get me at LinkedIn, and I have a super easy email address. If I can help any of you, it's just my name, Betsy.Wilson, and if you can just remember, Erickson.com.
LinkedIn as well, I can be found, and the picture is the same picture that you saw in there before. I have a Facebook page. I'm not really as active on Facebook, but LinkedIn, if you have any direct questions, you can come see me afterward, and I'll share my email so we can keep in touch.
Great. Thank you so much. Was that not amazing? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So once again, we want to thank Tamara from Lockheed Martin and Betsy Wilson from Ericsson, Lisa Atherton from Textron, and then Tracy Drain from NASA. Can we give them one more hand, please? Great. And on behalf of the Eric Johnson School of Engineering and Computer Science and the Gallerstein Gender Center, we are officially dismissed. Have a good evening.